David Lang is the guest for our channel today. And David, welcome to this channel. And it's so nice to see you. And I'm very thankful that you agreed to join this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's lovely to meet you as well.
Just to give a short introduction on David Lang, uh, he became interested in spiritual matters after his addiction recovery through Alcoholic Anonymous. Now, those who do not know, the Alcoholics Anonymous or AA, it's a well-known recovery program which has several steps through which the people can overcome uh, whatever the level of addiction they have gone into. But David's life changed since then, and he, with a new perspective on life, started talking online as to how spiritual seekers could alleviate suffering. So his message helps you to come out of suffering, whatever the suffering. And as you know, uh, now, for instance, if now most of our Sri Lankans are Buddhists, and the word suffering is a key teaching in Buddhist philosophy, or what we call dukkha. So suffering, although the life shows us many pleasures, but eventually you see the suffering like two sides of the coin, and of course then you are subject to old age and sicknesses and all that. So David spends time talking to people on exploring direct experience, which will lead to ending of suffering. So David, uh, I would like to offer you this stage to communicate this message. But let me start with this question. This everyone goes through suffering one way or another. I mean, even if you have the wealth or the power or the publicity or whatever, you eventually the suffering is like it underpins uh, anyone's life, although you may not explicitly say that. So, David, who is from Northern Ireland, is going to give us some advices, and I would request our audience to pay attention to what he has said. So, my initial question is: would you subscribe to that idea that suffering which underpins everyone's life, one way or another?
Yeah. So my experience with it is exactly what you're talking about. There was always this background, like existential question, this background kind of feeling, and it was the feeling of not knowing what's going on. It was really the feeling of a question about death. So like, what am I? Why am I here? I have the knowledge that I'm going to die, but for me at least, something about that didn't feel right. There was some area in which my mind, my understanding couldn't reach to, and that made me really unsettled. So like you're describing, there was a constant kind of background question that was there, and sometimes it was more obvious than others. But in my case, it manifested in an extreme way. So this suffering that you're talking about led to a behavior, um, and that behavior was, you know, using substances, so using alcohol to kind of remedy what you described there, to kind of remedy that background and feeling of not rightness, and so that I could kind of forget that question for a while.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, David, now let me put it this way. A very practical way of looking at suffering. Now, let's say a thought comes and it leads to a feeling, and the thought may arise from something to do with future expectation or something that has happened in the past, or it could be on on a situation, or it could be on a person. So initially, if you look at it, it may be a thought, and then it triggers something, and inside you feel that, the pain. That's a basic way of analyzing it. But is that analysis correct? I mean, is there another way of looking at it?
No, I feel that's a good description. It's like um, for me, it really felt like a personal relationship with life. So, I would relate to life through thinking, through my thoughts from this
Mm,
point of view. And, there was my experience of that relationship was I was at the center of it. So there was a feeling of a me here. And the feeling of a me being apart from or owning the thought experiences. So the thoughts would come and go, and like you described perfectly there would be like thoughts that were neutral, that just came and went.
mm,
It was just part of the background, part of the flow of experience. But then there were thoughts that were personal.
mm,
They felt heavy, they had gravity to them. And like you said,
mm,
it seemed to trigger this feeling, that this experience.
mm,
The experience felt uncomfortable. It felt like
mm,
I was resisting my experience from a
mm,
point of view. Um, like you're saying, trying to um, change it, trying to look towards a better experience, or trying to avoid or avert
mm,
from the experience that's currently here now. So it's like the relationship with thinking, and the relationship very much felt personal. It was like, this
mm,
is my point of view, this is my thought, this is my
mm,
experience, this is my interaction with this person, and I have to exert effort to in mind to control that and try and make it more favorable for me, the character in the center.
mm. Is it the resistance to the experience, or is it because you have an expectation and that experience is contradicting, or it is not exactly the experience that I was looking forward to? So this unsatisfactory feeling, or you are not happy, or unhappiness, it can trigger in so many ways, but you have found a way to look at things from a different perspective. So if you could relate it, I believe that it will enlighten our audience as to how this whole thing can be looked at. Not like the way they have been, all this in their entire lifetime, how they have been looking at it, but is there another way of, now, for instance, now say a thought arises, and I have no control over that. I don't even know where it is coming from. And say, for instance, if it is an unpleasant thought, obviously I wouldn't, you know, receive it with open arms. So how can you possibly have a thought from an unpleasant thought, which you don't want to attain, but it arises. So it's something beyond your control,
Mm.
and it's beyond your control. So there is something that probably people are unaware of.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so in my experience, what you described there, it seems to be all based on this context. So there's an assumption here, and the assumption is that I'm separate from my experience.
Hmm.
I'm here as this point of view, and I'm relating to my experience from that point of view. So the whole thing was like it's like the feeling of the real point of view, the feeling of the real personal relationship with life. So it's kind of like like you're mentioning direct experience there. Um,
mm,
I'll describe to you my experience with the addiction because I feel that is kind of relevant. So with the addiction thing, the whole recovery program was basically taking experience more and more directly into what was happening immediately in the thoughts, and it was all geared towards are a certain set of thoughts which trigger a certain set of behaviors, and those behaviors become destructive. So it would be like, I feel this way, so I should go and drink or go and take drugs or something like that. So it was looking at that um, initially, that thought, the thought function that was appearing now, and it was like just seeing that um, seems to kind of cancel out that point of view. So
mhm,
they cancel out that personal aspect. It kind of expand out with that thought, so that it's not, so that you're not living from it. It's like I look at that thought directly as it comes up now, and it doesn't so much feel like it's my thought. Um,
mhm,
you can see it happening. It becomes kind of more neutral, or the experience of what I am kind of expands out with that. It's kind of like a different, like you said, a different point of view, an expanded sense of identity, and that happens when a thought is observed in real time. So then there is the awareness that this is a thought, but if I'm in it, then it feels like what I am. It feels like, in my case, this suggestion of a behavior, which is a thought, seems reasonable in some way. But if I kind of slow down, look at it as it appears in real time, then there's almost like a different perspective on it. There's almost the relationship with thought changes, and it becomes more neutral. And like you described there, you can see that this thought is not happening due to my will, and that I'm not actually in control. So for myself with the addiction thing, it was very clear that I wasn't in control of my behavior, which is quite frightening. And the
yeah,
behavior being such a destructive one, it really
mm,
had to admit that, look, I'm not in control of this. This is just happening on its own. So what can I do about that if I'm not in control? Um, how can I solve that problem? And like we described there, it's like slowing down, looking at what's actually happening here when I engage in this
mhm,
behavior. Because when I engage in the behavior, I'm almost already 2 steps down the road. So we take a step
mhm,
back and we look at what's happening as this thought that I'm not in control of forms. Like, what does it look like? What is it saying? How is it controlling my behavior in that way? And something about that, it's quite paradoxical and it's very hard to describe, but something about that um, it invalidates the power of that thought to suggest that that's
mm,
real. And
mhm,
essentially, it's based on this context that I am the thinker, that this is my
mhm,
thought, that this is my experience. So doing that repeatedly, basically what happened is I isolated a type of thought, a
mhm,
part of my identity, just the addictive thoughts. So suddenly the thoughts of the addict became not me, and I could look at them pragmatically and say, what is this addict that what is this role that I'm playing? What is this addict that is running the show here? It's just a set of thoughts and beliefs and sensations. So what's happening there? And that is isolating a type of thought, and the thought of the
mhm,
addict, and like, you know, disidentifying from that repeatedly. And after a while, the thought just didn't have any power. But because
mm,
I knew how to do that, so to speak, which is basically self-inquiry, because that had been practiced, later on down the line, it ended up being practiced with all thoughts, and the
Mm-hmm.
assumption of this identity was questioned as well, because even when the addiction was solved, so to speak, the deep
Mm-hmm.
reason for it still persisted, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
much like that reason, that whatever is happening there is happening as a thought experience. It's happening in mind.
I want to double check whether I understood it in the same way that you related this to me. Now, first thing that you said was that I am separate from my experience, which you said is something that we need to probe into. Am I different to my experience? That's one thing you said. Then you used the word awareness. Now, awareness is not exactly like um, a thought that comes in. Awareness is like, to me, it was more alertness. It's like, you're constantly aware of what's going on. So even if a thought arises, you could probably see it, coming in. And then after that, in fact, now my own experience is that, when the thoughts arise, the thoughts do not like to be watched. The moment you look at the thought, it tends to disappear. But you said something like you should get yourself attuned to this. So after a while, the strength, the weight of this thought can probably, if not, gradually diminish. I would like you to emphasize on that because, I mean, that's a very crucial part of any person who is seeking inner peace. Although it sounds simple, uh, but I think that's the crux of the whole thing. So I would like you to, even if you have to repeat it, it's fine, David.
Yeah. So what you're saying there, like, about the thoughts don't like to be watched,
Mm,
it's like having an awareness that there is thinking happening, there is thought. So I noticed, like kind of taking a step back there, um,
mhm,
and looking at the thought in real time, like the experience of
mhm,
thought, like you're saying,
mhm,
the power of that thought to suggest that it's real diminishes, and it's
mhm,
almost like you can't find
mhm,
the thought. But then other times, when you're living from this point of view, from this subject,
mhm.
when you're
Okay.
experiencing yourself to be the thinker, it's
Mhm,
the world, the reality that the thoughts are suggesting feels real. It feels like my reality, and that's just
mhm,
this is. And it can kind of get a bit out of control, and it can start suggesting realities that um, aren't that reasonable. You know,
mhm,
interpretations of reality, or a relationship with life that becomes dysfunctional. But like you described,
mhm,
yeah, like taking that step back, and having an awareness that there is thought, because when you're living from the identity in mind, the thinker, it's not
mhm,
apparent that you're thinking. The thoughts
mhm,
are creating a reality that's not real.
mhm,
So it's like you said, taking a step back, looking at that there is thought happening, and just that step back allows this kind of space. And it's the space to be able to inquire into, what am I that's having the thoughts, the thinker? Because I'm aware of
mhm,
the thought experience. All of this appears within my
mhm,
awareness. But there's a suggestion here that I am this point of view, the subject, subject to these thought objects that are mine, that are happening to me, or I'm in control of them. So that
mhm,
space, it seems to be required to be able to look back and see, what am I that's having the thoughts in the first place, that's here? Because throughout my whole life, I'm certainly here, and I'm having these thought experiences that present a reality to me. But what am I that's actually here? What am I that knows this experience of thinking?
Mhm.
That's the self-inquiry as I understand it.
This self-inquiry is a very kind of a popular thing happening here, even in this part of the world, where they say you pay attention to yourself. Of course, yes, you can do that. And people are doing that. They are opting to various practices such as meditation and discussions and, being aware of yourself. There are so many practices. But there is an element of this revolves around the free will and choice, whether there is actually a free will and choice that you have, or people think that there is someone doing the controlling part inside the body. However, now there are many speakers, they are challenging this, the notion of free will and choice, and they say no, there is no such thing called free will and choice. Now there's a paradox. Now, here there is awareness, and with which you can obviously see that you are not the thinker. That's for sure. But you can be the observer of the thought. Then, where will this free will and choice fit in to this overall scenario?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, these are, of course, the general questions that everyone is asking who are into these deep spiritual practices. So, how would you respond?
Yeah, so it's like we're talking about when you start to inquire, when you start to actually look into direct experience, not just the content of thoughts as they're suggesting something else that's not here, but really get immediate with experience and look, firstly, that I am here, certainly, that my experience of
Mm,
myself is present, and I'm having a thought experience. And it's like when we start looking at that directly, a couple of things start to become apparent. It becomes apparent that how many thoughts there actually are.
mhm.
Um, and there are layers of thought as well.
Yeah,
For me, there was
yeah.
this overt narrative that was like
Mm,
language in the head that would
mm,
continue talking. And I noticed that's there a lot and it feels like me. But I also noticed in attempting meditation that, I could make the decision consciously as an autonomous agent to say, I'm going to sit down and I'm either only going to have this type of thought or
mm,
like a
mm,
positive one, or I'm not
mm,
going to have thought for the next so
mm.
hours or whatever, or even like
Yeah.
even minutes. And that quickly shows us that what I am as this
Mm,
suggestion of the subject to my thoughts, to the thinker, certainly isn't in control of this thought experience. So it's like the
mhm,
thoughts are happening to me, um,
mhm,
in a subjective way, maybe. Thoughts are just happening, and they're talking about, and I'm not in
mm,
control of that, and they're talking about me and my life in a way,
mhm,
presenting a reality to me, all based on this context, this assumption that what I am here is somehow
mm,
separate from my experience at all.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
and like you said, it's paradoxical as well because
mm,
we look back into our experience and this subjective position can only find objects, this sense of self, it can only relate to objects of attention,
mhm,
um, thoughts, and it does that through this assumption that I'm apart from my thoughts and I have to relate to them in that way. Like you're saying that there's this observer, this point of view, and it's like thoughts appear in a linear way across a conveyor belt. And it's just like really, really looking at closer and closer at the experience of thought. Thought starts to become um, more interesting, the experience of thought directly. what's happening here to create this sense of self starts to become more interesting than what the thoughts are talking about. Because I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but for me, the thoughts were very repetitive. They only talked
Mm-hmm.
about the same things, and they had this uncomfortable context in them. And the context was, I'm separate. Life is happening to me. I'm apart from experience, and I'm relating to it. What's happening now, um, is a relationship between two things, me and my life, the subject and my
Mm.
experience. And fundamentally for me, that was an uncomfortable reality.
Right. Now, David, how do you feel now? Now, you have gone through this, and then you had all these experiences of, having to go through programs and such. Now, how do you feel exactly now in relation to how you relate yourself to outside environment? And, I mean, I believe you still have thoughts coming in, and you have to live as a normal human being, and then, you if you want to laugh, you will laugh. If you want to cry, you will cry, all that. But how would you see the difference between you now and you then?
Yeah, yeah. So what's more obvious or overt here in experience now is a sense experience that is immediate. That what I am, if I could even say that, is not apart from this. So it's like a singularity. It's like a non-dual appearance that is just moving and morphing and changing on its own. Um, and there's no me in here apart from it, physically and mentally. Um, my experience before was, I was living somewhere else that wasn't here. To talk
Mm-hmm.
about presence and immediacy, the sense
Mm-hmm.
experience was kind of, it wasn't the most obvious thing. The most obvious thing was my thoughts about somewhere else or something else.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this um, fundamental aversion that seemed to be built into experience that was taking my attention away from this as it is, the sense experience. And the more I looked into that, the less power that had to take attention away. I noticed how powerful, I want to emphasize this, I noticed how powerful that mechanism was, that had the ability to take my attention away from what was simply present, the senses,
Mm-hmm.
hearing, seeing, sensing, feeling, even my body,
Mm-hmm.
especially the body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it had the power to just pull attention away from that into um, an awareness of our relationship with life as it is somewhere else, a construction, a mental construction about, yeah, a better experience or past or future. It was so powerful. So like, yeah, I did most of my practice walking, so it was a
Mm-hmm.
very physical, visceral experience. And but part of what I noticed was what I wanted to experience the senses immediately. I wanted to experience life as it was happening now. So I would open the attention to the senses. So looking, where am I? How does my body feel? What are the sounds in the environment? Becoming aware of the environment immediately. But then there would be this thing that
Mm-hmm.
happens before you know it. Attention's in the mind, and you're looking back in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of come out of the dream, wake up, and you're like, okay, I was gone there. What happened? How did this take attention away from the senses when I want to be here? I want to experience the mystery of life as it is now. So it's looking
Mm-hmm.
at that repeatedly. That mechanism had, like exactly like we described, this inquiry. The mechanism had
Mm-hmm.
less power. So then I was more and more, what I am was more and more here, immediate in the senses. And as that happened, something about the senses became more and more obvious, and that is this great mystery, and this miracle that this even is. That there was this amazing interest in what's being seen, the world, what I'm hearing,
mm,
the strange mystery of being in this body, or
mm,
experiencing the senses. And it's just I found that to be like a great relaxation, because there
mm,
was a constant effort exerted in order to create a um, illusory reality in this internal
mm,
world, and focus attention away from what's just simply here, which is the senses.
mm,
So
mhm,
now it's like, um, I like to describe it like art. There is this
mhm,
appearance, this expression, and I can't
mhm,
find the me in it. I can't find the point of view in it, or something apart from it. I can't find anything separate in it, but it moves and morphs and changes and expresses itself. And to me, it's like art, if I was to describe it. It's just an artistic expression of the infinite, which is infinitely beautiful, infinitely free. Um,
mhm.
it's just simply here. Yeah.
David, you mentioned what is rising out of your experience is that you mentioned two things. One is immediacy. What is immediate? Or they call it now, or they call it the present moment, or whatever. But immediacy, it's a very key word. And then you also said that you felt that, the subject object, uh, a kind of a connection, some connectedness, or what they call oneness, um, or you are. There is no subject object kind of a difference, but you feel that it's all just one happening. I would like you to mention that again, because from uh, we can we can use logic to establish that everything is connected to the other. I mean, a tree needs water, the tree needs sunshine, and so if you look around, everything is connected to the other. But that is logic. Now, to see that you are not separate, but just, or you can't even say part, but there is just feeling of oneness. And now, if that is something achievable, or is it something achievable, or is there something that you can do to achieve? Now, if you are just part of that, then it is kind of contradictory to say that you have to do something to experience that. Again, a paradox. But I like when you said that when you are walking, when you look around, there's a possibility that you might see this reality. Can you speak on that again, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned a doing, like I would, yeah, I would describe it as like an undoing, like a
Mm,
relaxation into the senses as they are appearing now. Uh, like you said, in immediacy. And this mind, this function in mind, this subject object, um, it always talks about, at least for me, always talked about something that wasn't here. And it would only talk about an interpretation of reality as the one who knows it. So
mhm,
all of this was based upon this assumption that I am the knower, and I know
mm,
what this is. So I look at a chair over there, and as soon as I
mm.
know that, it loses its mystery. It becomes mundane. It becomes the known, and it's all based on this point of view. So initially, it's
David, hang on, hang on. I have to disturb you because My audience is laughing at me sometimes when I relate uh, this particular question with all the speakers. I'm sorry I disturb you, but this is what there's a frangipani tree which I can see beyond the window, and it has beautiful flowers. And I see it all the time because I do my interviews here. So I used to ask um all the speakers. Now, the usual way of explaining this is I am here and I see through my eyes that tree, and I recognize that tree as frangipani, and it has got beautiful white flowers, or they call it the temple tree. So now you just said that the moment you identify that, you lose the mystery. I fully agree with you because I just gave a basic, mundane, very crude description of that. But there is a mystery. And where do you think I have missed out?
Yeah, so this is my favorite part because once the attention is no longer consistently pulled into this internal world, attention, you mentioned attention before, it kind of relaxes out away from the in here thought experience, and it relaxes
Mm-hmm.
into what's here, which is the senses. So they're it kind of imbues experience, or this mystery that is experience immediately as like a physical, visceral, sensory thing starts to open up, and I started to see exactly what you described. I would see something I know, uh, an
Mm-hmm.
object, but I would
Right.
also see something else, and I can't. This gets really paradoxical now. I can't describe it, but um, I would attempt to describe it like the substance of experience, like people say awareness, knowingness, so on. Just
Mm.
words, but it points to something beyond words. And I was noticing something beyond the object that I know. I noticed that you know awareness doesn't know distance. Awareness doesn't know
Ah.
separateness.
Mm.
Yeah,
Right.
awareness doesn't know
Mm-hmm.
that there's someone looking here um, from this point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Mm-hmm.
noticing those labels, I like to talk about it like an augmented reality. There's
Mm.
the known, the objective world is augmented onto the pure awareness, the pure looking. So just noticing that opens up the mystery of the looking, and then but it also you also notice that attention does this trick, which is it maintains the attention out there somewhere,
Mm.
um, not back here towards the looker. So it's like just noticing that opens up the attention back towards the one looking, and then we start to question, where am I looking from? This is my favorite part because it's so
Yeah.
weird, so weird. I
Mm.
have this assumption, right, that um, I see other people walking about
Mm.
and getting on with their lives, and I see them maybe from a profile, and I see they stop here. That's the limit of that person. So I assume
Yeah.
that I'm like that. So then I look into this might sound ridiculous to some people. I look into my experience and I look back and it's like, where am I looking from at this world? And I had this assumption that somehow I was looking from a single point out of this window that was my eyes, out across space at an external world. All of that suggests that I am here as a separate thing. I'm separate from my sense experience. There is a limit to
Mm-hmm.
me here somewhere. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like looking, I looked back for that one, the start point of my looking. Where is me in this, the looker? And I couldn't find it. And I was like, that was just an assumption. and it felt a certain way. It felt separated. It felt small.
mm,
So then I look across space, and that
mm,
distance between me and the object, and
mm.
it's invisible. It's actually not there. So so
Yeah.
so space is something that is made up, is added to the looking. And I start to notice that in the looking, you might recognize this from Buddhist teaching. The only thing in the looking that I can say for sure or I'm experiencing is
Mm,
what I'm looking at, the objective world.
mm,
So it's like that space closes, and my experience of myself is no longer apart from the external world that I'm looking at. And
mm.
um, it's a very close and like connected, relaxed and intimate way of experiencing life, if that makes sense.
Uh, well, it does, except that, of course, the curiosity of our audience will come up with some more questions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you are looking through, and the original assumption is that you're looking through the eyes. And then you began to pay attention to that distance, that there is a space between you and the object. And you did mention that you started questioning that space, right? Then another thing that you mentioned was that your the paradigm is limited. It's limited, but then, and which eventually say or like interprets that you are saying. But for instance, if it is generating like for example a projector from behind, which also shows you and this whole thing, I'm just I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
trying to visualize what you said. So just those two examples. In other words, are you trying to say you get out of this unorthodox, way of looking and analyzing things the way you have been doing from the time in memorial or something? You just look at the, some odd things, how can there be a space in the first place? Or how can I observe a space? Or can it be something which is coming from the past memory, or like I would like you to hit on that point, David. You know why? It tells a big story for a seeker,
Mm.
or
Yeah.
rather, who is someone ready to swim upstream,
Mm.
so to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that mystery, that paradox that you mentioned starts to carry the inquiry, and it carries the
Mm,
inquiry um, into the senses, into that which is simply here. And
mm,
the inquiry for me, it was like looking into experience in the senses, getting really close to the senses, opening to them and seeing, is there a limited entity here? Because I feel like I'm
mm,
in a separate body, but I look into the senses, and then these things they start to come into experience, and it's like really weird, things that
mm,
we never questioned before, like there's no looker in the looking, and then
mm,
like sort of like hear the sounds, and this mystery just carries attention and curiosity into that. And I started noticing that moving around my attention moving around the senses, noticing these assumptions that I was in a container, that what I am,
mm,
these senses are personal, they're owned by me,
mm,
and what's primary
mm,
to the senses is the self that's here.
mm,
It's just looking for that self. And the key thing I want to say to seekers is, I think that's why this unfolded so quickly for me, that it started to not become a burden, not become something I was doing for a reason, the inquiry, I mean. And it started to become
mm,
like a hobby, the interest
mm,
in looking for this
mm,
this self. or just looking at
Mm-hmm.
experiencing and experiencing, asking what this is, became extremely enjoyable. It became the thing that I
Mm-hmm.
to do the most. And it's a hobby that's always available because it's always right here. So that became the
Mm-hmm.
most interesting thing possible for me, looking into the senses and looking at what is this. And I noticed that in any sense, I noticed first that there is no division between the senses. So there's no seeing, separate hearing, separate feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't find the division. So the senses all kind of merged. Once that assumption of separation was noticed to be a thought that was added to this, it kind of fell away. And I also noticed that there's no limit to uh, what I am. There's no what I am here. It's just the sense experience. So every time I find something that's uh, one of these thoughts that's separating up experience as a reality, that or notice it as a thought, its reality falls away. So then what is replaced with is just this single sense that's not limited.
Saying that no, you were saying it because it's just here and it became enjoyable because you can do it all the time and it
Yeah.
became a normal practice. David, it does resonate because you just mentioned that it's available all the time. You know, it's something that I mean you can't use the word you can do or it's not like doing something. It does resonate. Now, this question, it's a very mundane question. Now, what you said is something that is available to everyone who are in the quest of this. Now, what about these excessive thoughts? Now, say you might associate the nature, you will continue to say, no, this can't be just this compartment, it has to be something wider than this, with that, but you will have this bombardment of, the thoughts that will take you away and you will start thinking of your office, you will start thinking of your whatever you have to do tomorrow, and and then finally you lose that presence. Now, how did you resolve that?
Yeah, so it's yeah, same kind of thing. It's like before the interest was in the content of the thought, so what the thought was talking about. And it was always talking about or talking from the point of view or the context of a self here. So it's like the interest in the content of thought kind of turns round or turned round. And what became more interesting was the direct experience of thinking. So it's like not what the thought is saying, because I can notice that there is thought in it saying this, but what is the thought? What is the substance or the material of that thought? Like where is it in my experience? What does a thought feel like? Can a thought hear? Can a thought see? Just curious about what is thinking. But that investigation is always done directly as the thought is appearing. So it's like I started to notice that there was this bombardment of thoughts, but when I kind of stopped and looked at it, the direct experience of the thought as it was appearing now, like you described before, it kind of dissolves, and then you wait for a minute, and then another one appears and dissolves. It's
Mm,
kind of like
mm,
I am here throughout that, and this is aware, this is appearing within my awareness. So there is this aliveness, this pristine awakeness in which this is appearing.
mm,
And that seems to manifest as separate thoughts like that. But when we really stop and look, there's only ever one thought. And then again, looking a bit closer, is there a distinction between no thought and thoughts? Because I got really caught up
mm,
on achieving a state of thoughtlessness. But when I looked
mhm,
at the thoughts closely, I could see that there isn't,
mm,
in what I am, the awareness, there isn't even a distinction
mhm,
between thought and thoughtlessness. So it's like the whole thing,
mhm,
the whole thing falls apart, and it's
mhm,
replaced with simply what I am as this pristine, clear, awake aliveness in which all of this seems to be appearing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I am
Mm-hmm.
can't be found apart from the substance of thought. So it's like I am the
Mm-hmm.
substance of thinking. I am the substance of seeing, hearing, touching, tasting. But
Mm-hmm.
there's this strange function that happens in the space of thought that
Mm-hmm.
seems to just get out of control. Yeah.
It sounds like it's like a, you are the, the bigger awareness, and then all these that are happening. Because I asked this question while you are in the very present moment, you might think of something that you have to do tomorrow. So you will go and make a note of that. Oh, I have to do this tomorrow. Now that may have come as a thought that something you have to do it. So now, basically, the so-called thoughts which we think are enemies all the time, but they are also needed, for your day-to-day, operations. The question is the quantum or the weight or the, that noise. The I mean, most of the thoughts are useless, that we know. I mean, but I mean that part will gradually diminish. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yeah, yeah. So like you mentioned the thought being an enemy because there
Mm,
is a recognition that this experience of this bombardment of a narrative is uncomfortable.
mm,
So it's the initial thing for me was that I need to get rid of the thought. But then in taking that action, that looking in through this inquiry at the thought, to try and get rid of it,
mm-hmm,
some point the incredible mystery of the experience of thinking became available. So it's like just the
mm-hmm,
experience of the thought becomes so interesting. It's like it's so weird, it's
mm-hmm,
so bizarre that there's this sense that we have. I would describe it like a sense that can move and morph and change. It can become anything. It's infinitely free to appear as anything. So
mm-hmm,
I can think about sounds,
mm-hmm,
shapes, and such. You can't find it when you look for it, but it's here. It's like a shapeshifter.
mm-hmm,
That's just incredible to me. That's bizarre. That's a
mm-hmm,
bizarre mystery that I think why wouldn't you be interested in exploring that? But in taking up that exploration, at some point there's a noticing something becomes aware that the self that's in that just comes and goes like a
mm-hmm,
that I felt like I was this point of view is something that's transient and ephemeral. It just appears and disappears. But like you said, throughout that whole experience, what I am is just simply here. Yeah.
mm-hmm. David, I don't know whether it's appropriate to ask this question now. You went through a process, and eventually you got into this investigation. Was there a particular message or a particular, something that underpins that I should look for this, or this should be my stance, except for what you were telling us before? But was there any sort of a guiding, like a principle that I should stay like this? If so, what was it?
Okay, interesting question. So I think I would say becoming interested in the relationship that's happening here with life. So looking into
Mm,
there is a relationship here, and sometimes it's a good one, sometimes it's a bad one. Um, but noticing that that relationship is very much with thought most of the time. It was for me. So then it's like what is this relationship I'm having with thought? And that kind of question can um, open up that curiosity and kind of take the attention away from
mm,
the content of thought. And no,
mhm,
sometimes it requires, based on my experience and people I'm talking to, it requires this kind of powerful effort or powerful drive or force, be able to really look into what's happening in that relationship with thought right now. Like what is the, like I said, what is the experience of thought, my experience of thinking as it's appearing now. You know, I think for myself, the force that was required was the um, drug and addiction problem, because that necessitated that honest looking, that pragmatic looking into experience. So I can say for myself, in my experience, the suffering is driving it. The experience of suffering is driving this kind of the fire that we have to really question what's going on. You know, otherwise there'd be no reason to question it if there was no suffering. But I think that can really be used to like supercharge the inquiry, getting in touch with what is suffering, what am I feeling now, what is the experience of me that somehow is suffering that doesn't feel quite right, and then using that to charge the inquiry to create that force that's needed to break this habitual cycle of identity. And yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but
yes, indeed. Excuse me. Now, I think you said it all, because I mean, I don't want to dig into more questions, because if at all, each one has a own journey, and in that journey, when you look back, certainly, excuse me, in that journey, when you look back, probably you can relate certain things, but that again, you can't say it because of this, this was the result, that you can't correlate. Then you are going back to these mundane teachings, and probably if you have to do a lecture or something in a university, then you might have to probably say that. But I would like to end our question like this. It's like a readiness potential. I like this word, readiness potential. Means somehow, even as you said, that suffering, it supercharged it. And it also, just as much as it's not welcome, but it can also bring light to, someone, provided you have that readiness potential. It may be deliberate, it may be, circumstantial, it could be. So with that, you know, I would like you to end this thing with a message to our viewers as to how, they could look at life and existence from a different perspective, and questioning your beliefs, questioning what you have been thinking before. So please take a few minutes to
yeah.
end this, David.
Yeah, so I think the for me the experience of being self, I was always looking to get away from life, get out of it. I was always looking to go somewhere else that wasn't here, because I wasn't
Mm,
connected with my experience. Like a message I'd like to convey is that this awakening thing is all about getting closer to life as it's unfolding now.
mhm,
It's going into this, not pulling back out of it somewhere else. It's all about getting closer to life. So I think a good method of inquiry, if anyone's interested in meditation, is to engage in something in your life that you enjoy and you would do just for the sake
mm,
of simply doing that without any end goal. And that kind of
mhm,
intimacy and connection with experience as it is now, um,
mhm,
eh, in my experience, just opens us up to getting
mhm.
closer to this mystery.
Great. So David, I think this will be a very fruitful discussion, and whatever you said, I'm sure will resonate with people who are in that right place in the right time. Who knows? Maybe once this is uploaded, this will be there in my YouTube, and someday someone will click and then, this is something I haven't done. After all, I
Yeah.
did everything except, what is within me already. So, David, thanks a lot indeed. So, it was David Lang who joined us from Northern Ireland, and we are very grateful to him. David, thank you very much for
Thank you.
joining us, and we really appreciate on behalf of the Sri Lankans uh, in Sri Lanka.
So same here. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. It's been fun.